I live alone. So I have reached out to my CKLS family just to give me somebody to talk to. So if you need this to where you can actually look at somebody and have a conversation, don't hesitate to say so. We've got more than one Zoom room and we can make sure that happens. And we have other kinds of technology to do it as well. So just to let you know, you're not alone out there, and I know it might feel like that. So we do want to know how you are. So I'm going to let you use chat. If you'll notice, I put in there on a scale from 1 to 10, how are you from I'm okay to very concerned. If you don't want to put your answer out there, you don't have to, but if you do, that might give us a clue about how you're feeling about just how things are in life right now.
5 out here in Delphus.
And that makes sense. That makes sense for a new librarian, especially.
Thank you. Something makes sense anyway.
I would anticipate that there's a lot of 5s out there. And sometimes we don't even know where we are yet, because this has all been very new and happening very, very quickly. Hey, that's great. Starting as a 3 and working up to a 4, that's awesome. Hey, and Haley's a 6. All right. I'm gonna go hang out with Haley, but I can't right now, so I guess I'm just gonna have to wait.
Wait, the higher the number, the worse off they are.
Oh no. Oh, I'm in big trouble.
Okay.
I miss being with people. Yes.
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 I miss being with kids. This is Barb.
Yes.
Yes, Barb, I completely get that.
Yeah.
A 6 today, that happens, but maybe tomorrow's a 2. That's very honest. I'm concerned because I've already have things scheduled. We're going to talk about that.
Yes. Yes, we are. Your CKLS staff will stay on this meeting after the meeting ends. And if you want to stay on after and talk about concerns if they're not addressed, and for heaven's sakes, it can be my wife or my husband is in Kansas City and he's sick and we don't know, we'll be here to talk with you. I don't know that we'll be able to solve all the problems in the world, but Patty and I are really, really good at staying up very, very late when we're in hotels and solving all the library problems. So we're certainly willing with our other consultants to help you with that as well, just so you know.
Okay, so we kind of know maybe how you are. All right, so I imagine you probably have some anxiety or some concern about summer library. If that number is different, please post it in the chat or shout it out loud. When it comes to the library, I'm at a 3, says Amy. Plan stuff to move online. So only way to get is from a computer. There we go. We're going to talk about that. Okay, Amy, there we go. Honest answer. Amy's at 100.
Joanne's at top as well.
Yeah.
Alice is also very concerned. I've not anybody say 1 or 2. Oh,
Yeah.
there's a 2.
It'll happen one way or another. Thank you, Colleen, because you're exactly right. Summer's coming either way. We don't know what it looks like yet, but it's coming. Good. Melody's in a good place in Ellenwood to practice teaching, so hopefully that will cross over to summer library.
Good.
Angie's holding out hope.
Yes.
That's a great word.
Who's the practice teacher? I need to visit with her.
Heather from Salina says, I'm about a 4, 6 because of summer library. I'm waiting to hear back from 4 performers on what they are planning. Okay, that's one of the things on the list. So I'm going to pull up the agenda again. And okay, first thing, youth services, everything that came in the door before we left is sitting exactly where it was on Thursday the 12th. Diane and I were both away at a meeting in Phillipsburg on the 11th. If it came in the door, it's still sitting exactly where it was when it came off the courier. Diane, can you address items that are on order and things that are out, please?
Yeah, I have 2 shelves full of stuff that's ready to go out whenever we get back. And that is all stuff that was pre-ordered for summer. Some of you have all of your summer stuff on reserve. It's a wait and see. There are requests sitting in the mailbox that can't be addressed at this point, but everything's up in the air. If you have requested items and things go back to the way they were, you'll get your items.
Orders will be placed orders will be filled in the order that they're placed.
Yes,
Just like always.
yes. That part hasn't changed.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. There is a link on the document, and I'm going to send this out as well. Over the last couple of weeks, there have been lots of opportunities that have occurred. Drawing with Mo Willems, story time with Jason Alexander. I mean, just all kinds of things that have popped up. And Diane and I have been feeding things to Christy, and Christy has been also adding them together. And this is a link to the LibGuide, if I can make it work. The LibGuide that Christy, nope. Come on, let's go the old way. Let's go the old-fashioned way. Come on. I have a million windows open. There we go.
Patty, I have put it in the chat already, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And people are starting to use the chat. Let's go back a moment to story time. Actually, I will hold the questions. Keep them coming in, and I'll hold them until there's an appropriate break. That way we have a little bit of continuity here.
Okay. So there's a whole bunch of stuff out there. The thing that, as you're looking at all those ideas, keep in mind that, frankly, most of the stuff was created because they knew school kids weren't going to school, likely till May or June, depending on when they got out. A lot of those things expire at the end of June, so we can't leave the reliance on those items as a way that we'll do our summer library program. I do want you to know that they're out there, and then we're going to talk about what might be happening in your library here in just a second. So in terms of summer library staples, the print materials that you ordered back in October, November finally arrived the week that we were doing the summer library program workshop. Frankly, all of that stuff is sitting in my living room right next to me to be counted. It will be counted and shipped out once things return to, as Diane said, what it was before, or I'm going to use the words new normal. They will be sent out. If we find that you need them before our courier system is back up and running, they will get mailed to you, and we'll request an address of where you need those items mailed. That
would be your home address.
That is your bookmarks, reading certificates, and reading charts are the things that are there. And then the posters are still at the office. And those would be the last things that would be mailed, and they get mailed separately. I want to address summer library program performers. I know several of you probably already have performers booked if that's the route that you take for your summer library program. I think the reality is that the likelihood of being able to keep those dates is probably very uncertain on both your side and the performer's side. I know I've heard from some who've said, I'm going to go ahead and cancel that contract and make it for November, or next April for Library Week, or perhaps even for summer 2021, when hopefully things will be truly back to whatever normal looks like. I know we don't want to put these performers out of business, and I know a lot of us are just flat going to have to cancel them because we don't have the dollars to support it at this moment. We want to keep the relationships where we can, but we do know that, frankly, if they're not busy performing, they may be going to work wherever they can find a job. Because a lot of these guys, a lot of the performers, it's their summer job if they're a teacher, or it's their full-time job, and now their full-time job has to look different because there's no place to do these activities. So I would think highly about those situations, and I certainly would do whatever I could to maintain those relationships, because one day we're going to need them again. Places like Sternberg, Milford Nature Center, the Great Plains Nature Center, those places are just flat closed down, and you can't even do anything about those relationships at this point besides sending a message saying, I'd like to talk when you're in the office. Somebody asked me about decorating, and this is the time that they would be ordering those items. Frankly, if you're in your building, the kids aren't going to care. If you had dreams of building your Magic Fairy Castle, build it later. That's not going to be what's most important to you, and it's not going to be what's the most important to the kids. Your kids want to see your face. That's why they're there. It's not about the books. It's not even about the building. It's about the you, all those people who take care of them. So that's one of those things that just gets wiped off the list. If you already have the materials, you can make magic later. Okay. The next one is hard. I'm going to address sponsorship letters first. Some of you have probably already done your sponsorship letters. They might be out, and perhaps you've already received some positive comments from them. Perhaps some of you have received checks. Let's think of Lucas and Luray for the size of town. Okay. Both of those towns have Lucas has quite a few more businesses and things in it. Most of our towns have something in our town, whether it's in Lebanon, we have the grocery store. It's also the cafe. Bison, we have the post office. So we've got lots of things from Salina to Randall that look very different. Some of you may have figured out how to fund your summer library program. Frankly, those letters that are out there that's sitting in mailboxes are likely probably this year to be ignored, or a note saying, sorry, we can't do it this year. We have to think of what our small businesses are feeling, and even our chains, like those of you who are lucky enough to have a Sonic or a Pizza Hut or a Dollar General. They're just holding on to the last dollars that they have for as long as they can stay open. So we have to know that the relying on that funding is probably not going to happen this year. Those that are going to give anyway will still do so. But my gut tells me, and if I was sitting in your chair, I would have ceased all of my letter writing, saved the 55 cents to send them all, and put that towards summer library, whatever it looks like. And know that, and just when you see them on the street, say, hey, we'll be back next year and it'll look different. Gail, can you address the next two items, please?
Yes, I'll be glad to. Okay, let's talk about the status of the system grant, because I've already gotten 3 private questions about that in chat. What I want to talk to you about is reality. What I also want to remind you is, how many times have you heard me say, or one of the CKLS consultants say, we are compassionate human beings. We're also very much based in reality. Okay, let's talk first about the story time sessions to fulfill the grant requirement. The grant we're talking about is the story time grant. Obviously, you can't be doing that right now. We're not going to say, okay, you've got to go online and make that happen. frankly, I've told my staff, and we're at the second largest library in this meeting, not to do online story time. Right now, there's so much stuff out there that people are informationally feeling bombarded and overwhelmed. If we did an overnight over, the internet story time would be adding to that emotional, informational chaos. We don't want to do that right now. If that's working for you, you can do it. There is no requirement from CKLS that says you have to do that. We fully well understand that from Saturday at 11 until this is over, nobody can do story time. If we're back in our libraries in the fall, yes, you can do story time. Okay, I hope that you understand. I haven't put it into writing yet, and I haven't said, okay, if you're Salina, you have to do X number of story times. If you're Great Bend, you have to do X number of story times. Just understand that while we're closed, we know you can't do story time, even if you had this great, amazing plan. We'll take that into account when it comes time for us to tally up all of the ways that libraries meet the system standards and ways that libraries meet the grant. Any questions on that, on the story time one? And here's where I have to sit quietly and wait because it's difficult.
Gail, I've got a couple of questions about doing those story times in the building at this point.
I'm actually gonna talk about that in a little bit. I can talk about it at length right now, but you should not be working in your building at all. I understand needing to do a webinar now and again, or you have to do payroll. Once a week, somebody should go in the building and run the faucets and flush the toilets a lot. Check and make sure you don't have a leak, a rat's nest building up in there, those kinds of things. But you shouldn't be doing work in the library. If you're doing an online story time, you better not be doing it in the library. You better not be going to the library to get books, to come back home to do it. You're not to be there. You are in a stay-at-home order, and libraries are not mission essential. They're vital to our small communities, even our larger communities, but they are not essential. I have a document that I've sent out to CKLS. I'll send it, I put it on Facebook, I'll send it out, that lets you know pretty much what you should and shouldn't be doing. And it's almost nothing in the library. We're not essential. And that hurts our feelings, but that's reality. Even medical librarians at KU are not at work right now. That might help you understand that. Okay. So you should not, let me see, I sent an email yesterday that really described that well, and let's see if I can bring that up.
There is a question to clarify, is it okay to come in for the webinars?
Yes, but I wouldn't, don't be cleaning and organizing when you're there, and don't be vacuuming, things like that. Yes, staff can go in to pick up their paychecks. If you don't have internet at home, you can go in and check your email at work, your work email, and you can check the mail. Don't be visiting with anybody. Don't let anybody in. Don't be bagging books up and dropping them off to anybody on your way home. If you've got books in your Dropbox, don't touch them. Okay? Amy, I know it's weird. I know it is. I'll send it out again on the Google group through email. If you are not on the CKLS Google group, and I suspect some of you aren't, why don't you write your name in the chat and we will get you subscribed. What we're gonna need is your email address. There might be a more secure way to do it. I just can't think of that right now. We'll be thinking on that. We are sending out emails on the CKLS Google group, what you should be doing now, what you shouldn't be doing. Here's how to clean your books. Here's what you, just all kinds of things. We sent out a lot of information, and I know we've got some children's librarians on here who aren't subscribed to that, and so we want to make sure that you're getting the internet at home. I mean, the information at home. Okay. I want to talk also about the status of the system grant. Summer Library Program is one of those things that is on the system standards. It has 3 parts. In that, there is a specific deadline listed. Obviously, you may not be able to make that deadline. You may not already be able to send in your calendar of what you've got planned to do. That's fine. We're not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet, and the regions get a great deal of money from the federal government that we use for Summer Library Program. If the baseball season starts, on down the road, when they print out the baseball Bible, they call it, players that may have gotten 20 home runs this year, there's going to be an asterisk behind their name, and that means something was weird. And in this instance, it's because they didn't have a spring training and they didn't have a full season. College seniors are going to graduate. High school seniors are going to graduate. It's not going to look like it was anticipated, but it's still going to happen. It may be that you do 1 week of Summer Library Program in August. We don't know yet. But remember this, we are compassionate human beings. We want to work with you, and who knows, if we're not in our buildings until November, we just give everybody a pass on it. We don't know yet. I think it's important that you just hear those very frank words, we don't know, and we understand. We know what it is to work 10 hours a week. We've played with that, and we really try not to give libraries extra work they're not going to be able to do during that time frame. It's pretty tricky. One of the other things we don't know about yet, but we can give a really darn good guess, is what the reality of library funding is going to look like. I'm going to quickly go over how libraries are funded, and then I'm going to point out some concerns that I have right now with that. So some libraries actually get extra money through sales tax. And if you're one of those libraries, you need to be aware of the reality right now that the amount of sales tax that you get is going to be drastically reduced. Drastically. If you get $100, you might get $5. Okay, that drastic is what I'm talking about. Most of us are funded differently. We're funded through what's called an ad valorem tax, and that is a property tax. We also are funded nominally on vehicle tags, recreational vehicles, ATVs, stuff like that. When the library board and the director sit down, and you should actually be doing this at your next board meeting, this is where it's time for that. These things don't change even though we're not doing our normal work. When you sit down, so I'll go with last year. So this time last year, libraries and boards were sitting down and saying, here's how much money we need to run the library in 2020. And in June, they presented that to the city, and the city probably approved it. Okay? That's how much money you said you need to run the library, and the city said, okay. In an ideal world, every single cent of that money comes to you. Everybody pays their taxes on time. Everybody registers their vehicles on time, and that money comes to you. But if you've watched your budget, and for those brand new librarians, you're getting the crash course here, unfortunately. If you watch your budget at the end of the year or even quarterly, you're not always getting exactly what you should be getting or what you asked for. And the reason is because of delinquent taxes. The city says, okay, we understand that's how much you want. And then they ask the county to levy that, and the county does. But if your funding is based on property taxes and vehicle taxes, and the state does something like says, okay, well, if your vehicle tags were due now, we're just going to automatically extend it a couple of months, 3 months, whatever. And that's for our safety. There are repercussions on down the line. By the time it gets down to ABC Library, just for vehicles, you're going to see a drop in the amount of money you get next quarter. And then think about property tax. Think about the fact that last week, I'm having a hard time with time. Everything is, I'm in like a time vortex lately. Okay, last Monday, the applications for unemployment in Kansas had increased by 600%. By Friday, it was up over 1,000% compared to where it had been the Friday before. That's because people are losing their jobs and they're not being paid. They're laid off and they're not being paid. They're told that they can stay working and they have to use all of their vacation and all of their sick, and then when that's gone, they're not going to get paid. It's a very ugly world out there right now. If they're not getting paid, they can't pay those taxes. So those property taxes are going to go delinquent. And by the time they get down to your library, your money is going to be really, really reduced. You're not going to get what you said you needed to run the library. And I think that that's a reality that we all have to face right now. We have to be thinking that in our third and fourth quarters, our second, third, and fourth quarters of 2020, we're not going to get everything we said we wanted. I think, this is just me pulling it out of the top of my head like that. It's going to take 3 years, maybe 5, for all those delinquent property taxes to catch up, so that instead of just getting a trickle, we get what we're supposed to get, which is a nice steady stream. So what that means then is that we need to be really cautious. The money that we have right now to spend on things, it may need to last us really until the end of the year. So if you're looking at purchasing children's books, don't be ordering what you need right now. You're filling a much broader need. You're not really ordering the books that you needed 3 weeks ago. You're thinking about the books that you're going to need for the end of the year. You may still want to purchase those books, or to set that money aside to purchase those books, but you may not want to lay them out all at once. You may want to stagger them out. And that way, when we're back in the libraries, your patrons are regularly seeing new books. The reason that I also wanted to talk about the realities of library funding is that we know that in the library world, the ugly stepsister is always children's services. I am a children's librarian by training and by practice, just as you are. And we all know that when it comes to getting budgeted, when it comes time to cutting budgets, historically, things for children's services were cut. Children's book purchases, materials purchases are usually significantly lower than adults, even though you may have just as many children checking out books in your library as adults. That's just our reality. The uptick of that is that we're also good at stretching a dime so thin it looks like a 10-mile rail track. And we're really, really good at making glorious and wonderful things happen with a piece of string and a little bit of glue. And that's the tenacity and the creativity that we're all going to need to bring to Summer Library Program this year. And I know it's going to be awesome, no matter what it looks like. And so I think that Patty has some ideas. Patty and I have been talking, and if you were here before we started recording, Patty has always stuck with me when we travel to conferences. I actually have roomed with everybody except Joy and Andy at this point, and Michael, and two of them aren't going to happen. So the other consultants know it's no treat to room with the director. But Patty and I inevitably, when we're gone at conference, and we were just gone at the end of February, have one night where we stay up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning solving the library world problems. And actually, we talk about these kinds of things on a regular basis. And so if we seem really calm, we are. We always have plan B. And that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of this. Now I've got some questions I've got to look through and see here. Okay, if we aren't able to have a normal SLP, may I suggest something for those who have scheduled a paid performer? Instead of a refund, see if they'll hold the booking until next year, and that way you aren't into a hardship and your performer booked ahead of time. And that next year might not be the fall, it might be summer 2021. Karen at Osborne asked about maintenance of effort. And what that means then is that your local entity does not decrease your budget or lower your mill levy. And Karen, they wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have deliberately done it. And maintenance of effort is really more about deliberate actions. They did not choose to lower your budget, and they did not choose to lower your mill levy. The city will not be punished because people weren't paying their taxes, and neither will the library. I'm going to have a director's meeting soonish. I can't remember when, and this is a great question for that as well.
April 30th.
April 30th. So all directors can be on board then. We may have to run one sooner than that because it is that budget cycle. And what do we do?
Sure.
Mary Beth, can you note that?
Yep, I'll make a note.
Okay. Sherry at Ellenwood is on this call. She is also one of the executive board members, and she said, our system funding will remain what we budgeted for the year. And yes, that is true. The money that CKLS said you were going to get for this year, you will get every penny of it. That you can count on. It's your local funding that might come into question. Now, luckily, CKLS has a really big contingency plan or a capital improvement plan. And so I think that even if we go in next year where the system's property taxes are lower and the system isn't getting what we ask for, we can look at diving into that and making sure that libraries get all of their system funding. And Amy says, for the materials grant and Storytime grant, should we hold purchasing using that money right now? Yes, please. That would be your best bet. Okay, Patty, was that everything you needed it to be?
Yes, and Gail pointed out that that although youth services, especially in a big library, is often the one that takes the hit, and in a way, that's because we've shown that you can do 14 Storytime crafts with one package of 200 paper plates, and so we've hurt ourselves a little bit. But as she said, and I'm in complete agreement with this, I know whatever it is we do. Two things. We will do the best that we can do with what we have, and our communities will respond in kind and say, yes, this is what we needed. And is it going to look like the program that you had planned? No. And some of you might not have even started planning because that workshop was so quickly ago before this all started to boil up. And so you were just now going to open the manual for the first time. And you know what? That's okay. Because on the 7th, everything changed for us. And so we don't know where we're headed. So the next block.
So CKLS started home on the 7th. On the 8th, Patty and I were talking about summer library program. And so we've got a head start on you here.
and Gail said we've worked on solving the library's problems. My job is to worry about things so Gail doesn't have to. And so she'll actually send me an email and say, hey, Patty, I need you to worry about this one so I can take it off the list, because she knows I'm going to worry about it anyway. And so, you know, in our daily conversations, you know, we're talking about your libraries, and we're thinking about the Lebanons and the Bisons and the Salinas and the Russells, because you all have different needs in different communities. But if you're spending any time online in any of the youth services chat spaces, everybody's feeling exactly what you're feeling. And that doesn't matter if you're Bronx, New York, or Seattle Public, or Randall, Kansas. We're all feeling the same thing. The next three things are about the day we walk back into the building. And these are just some things as you plan to keep in mind. You know, how long have we been open? You know, you're not going to be in any place to do a program on the second day that you're open. It's just not going to happen, because you still have to deal with all the stuff that came in the book drop, or the stuff that's going to come in when you open your book drop again. How comfortable is your staff being in the space? How comfortable are your patrons returning to a public space? And the big one, is your staff and your community well? Because if you are one of the ones that is directly impacted by this disease, it's going to take your community a little bit longer to be ready and well. And so your summer library program, if the guy down the street is having one, but you're not, because your community isn't well, even emotionally not well, because you've suffered someone having the disease, or heaven forbid passing, your level of wellness is going to be different than the guy 3 miles down the road, and that's okay. And again, that's the whole part about being compassionate. Heaven forbid one of us is touched in that way, but we want you to know that we're thinking about the bigger picture. So now it really comes down to the what does it look like? This is the question that I've gotten more often than anything. When do we start? When do we start has everything to do with the course of this disease and the decisions that are made. When the decision was made on the 17th to close the school buildings, we probably all did the same thing. There was that gush of surprise and disbelief. And then there was the, okay, this is a whole lot worse than we thought it was, probably was the next thing. And then those of you who are parents and grandparents, or have situations that require you to now be a teacher, all of a sudden your brain went there, and that's okay. So what will summer library look like? There are 3 different directions it could happen. My concern with the first one is virtual. My biggest concern is we're learning now that we have started to overload the connectivity and the broadband that we have already. And school just began for some places today. We know that our internet may have already been a little slower in some places, and now we have, some places have given out MiFis, some places have put more Wi-Fi hotspots in, but we know that it's already starting to overload. So there's part of that issue. And the other thing is about the virtual. We have all of these 3 things that are out there right now, but how many of those are going to exist once the normal takes back over and the kids' computers are now back at school? They've turned off the Wi-Fi hotspots that they were paying for, or they've asked for the MiFi devices back. So, you know, what does virtual look like? In terms of, it seems like it's the easiest because that's what everybody's talking about online. But I have to remember when they're talking about it online that they're Seattle or Fort Worth or Indianapolis or New York City. And a few days ago, the librarians that were having these virtual conversations were, oh yeah, this is completely what I'm going to do. But then it's just a few hours later that their community gets affected by this disease coming from one direction or another. So it's a possibility. And at the bottom of the page, there are listed some online computerized program options. And I'm going to address that right now. Google Forms is the one that you're used to because it's how you have to register for things. It's how you have to apply for your grants, how you submit your summer library program evals. You know how to do that. And it's free to where you would be able to run
they
your
know
program.
how to, what it looks like as a user. They might not know how to make it happen.
It does take some learning on the backside, but I have had experience with the third one down that says Wandu Reader. It's what Demco started. They were the first to do an online summer library program. And I was in a building before in a place where we said, oh, let's throw money at it because it's going to solve all of our problems. Well, first of all, it doesn't solve all your problems. And although I spelled it wrong, it looks like, the one that says the Great Reading Adventure, it says it is open source and free, and it is, but you'll see that last line that says it needs a building tech to set it up. Those were words straight out of one of the librarians in a larger city. I believe it was Northern California. And I said, so when you say tech to set it up, she says, I don't have those skills. And I said, so how do you feel about your tech skills? And she says, oh, she says, I can write web pages and I can do Canva and I can do, and she listed all the things she could do. Well, right then I got a little frightened because I'm like, okay, Andy can't be in 54 places to set up a summer library program. And so when I saw those words free and open source is how we share Koha, it's how to share information. But when I saw the words it needs a building tech, I thought this might be above where we are. Frankly, the rest of them on the list are very, very costly. They're by population. And this is, again, my personal opinion. Gail said right off the top of her head before, and now you're getting Patty's personal opinion. I don't think you need this headache right now. Perhaps if you are one of the big 4 libraries where you have multiple people and perhaps someone with tech skills on your staff, perhaps. I do not believe these are problems you need right now, because right now your problems are educating your children and making sure someone has a job and putting food on your table. That's what's important.
Programs are also very expensive.
They're very, very expensive. So what does live look like? Frankly, the honest answer is we don't know. Because is one day going to happen where they say you can have a group of children in a park and that's a safe location, but we're not going to allow you back into a public building? Possibly. Is it going to say, okay, everybody's free to do as they please and go back into your buildings and do what you want? Do you think every person in your community is just going to drop off their kids and go the other way? No, because they're going to have some hesitancies of their kids being in a public building. Something else about what live looks like. If in fact some miracle would happen and we would return to normal and be in our buildings to start summer library on June 1st, think of where the kids have been for the last 9 weeks. They've been at home, away from their friends, sitting in front of a screen for whatever learning they were able to accomplish in the last 9 weeks. Bless their hearts, they're going to be running free and wild when that first day comes and they're allowed to do it. Your library will be upside down for a while when the children are allowed to be there. And we know that there's always challenges with patrons. That's any library of any size. And we know that sometimes when kids move in a horde, they get scary. But you have to think they're gonna be so excited to see one another again and go to a place that mom says is safe, which is where you are. And when they come in, they're going to bring all of that with them. They're going to bring all that pent up energy. And the other thing that I thought of is if mom has been at home or dad has been at home educating, and now they're able to go back to work, now these kids are roaming free in your towns for the first time in 3 months. And they're going to come and they're going to be there when you open the door, and they're going to be hungry at lunchtime, and they're going to be hungry at dinner time, and they're going to go home when you close the door. So some of those aspects alive probably were not things you thought of, but actually they were ones that moved right to the top for me. Because at least summer lunch is still being provided from Kansas schools. I don't know how your towns are doing it that do not have a school in your town, but hopefully they're making some modifications to allow for meals to get there. But those are all factors. And I gotta say, for the next one, make and take, Gail and I were on it. We had these brilliant ideas, and then we forgot about the virus itself. Gail and I were ready to, she was gonna let me in the office, and she was gonna let me go to town and start making things to send to you guys so you could have something to offer, maybe at your library door, or maybe with the summer lunch program or whatever, you know, whether it was a craft activity or stuff for a science activity. And then I thought, well, you know, if I have a craft with cool yarn, Johnny and Becky are gonna go to the find the cool yarn in the bucket, so they're gonna go all the way down to the bottom. And now everything is potentially touched by someone else. And it's not like we have a vending machine that can disperse a one-at-a-time craft program or science program for you to have for your kids to do. I've seen a lot of you have been amazing where you've taken your weighted books and set them outside, and you've been very clear about don't bring them back. Some people may be hesitant to even dig through the box because we just don't know. And so, you know, I was all ready with make and take. I thought this was going to solve all of our problems until the reality set in. And, you know, it was one of Gail's early assignments because neither one of us were thinking. We just wanted to provide you something. And that's when I went haywire over the things.
We did not yet know how long the virus lives on surfaces. Last week, they were saying that through the mail, your chances of receiving a live virus were the same as being hit by lightning. Now today, it's a different answer.
So all of these things truly are things we don't know anything about. I know you're frightened. I know you're concerned. I know you're anxious because I am for you as well. And it's not just CK libraries, it's librarians that have known me for a long time who've come out of the woodwork and say, what would you do? You know, and I'm glad to be there as that resource. And it breaks my heart that I'm able to tell you almost nothing. That next thing that appears is the word prizes. This might be the year that we finally pull the Band-Aid off and go prize free. Frankly, for a couple of reasons. One, you may not actually be there to award these things. Maybe you've already spent your money and already have your backpacks or your t-shirts because you ordered them through CSLP or had them made. And by all means, share those things out. Summer 2020 won't look like any other year. But as we talked about before, there might not be the resources for funding that you rely on, either to bring in your performers or to buy your prizes. I shared Bead to Read, or Read to Bead with you at the workshop a month ago. And I'm looking at finding a way to see what I can do to help support that in your libraries, because at least it would be something. And we heard from a couple of libraries who had done it and found that it was successful, and the kids weren't so wrapped up in the coupons or weren't so wrapped up in the tchotchke, because now's the time when you open your door. Maybe the thing that you're doing is an online is a community summer library, and everybody works together to fill up that chart. What a way to show that your community stayed together in the time that you have to stay apart. So Gail has already addressed the standards. And as we said, we don't know what your flyer looks like because you don't know what it looks like yet either. And those
Right.
are things that I'm not concerned about. Your evaluation, that document will have to be returned in. We just don't know when, because that's actually our proof back to the federal government that we all did summer library and however it looked. And that last line there, that your summer library must involve your grade school age kids. This may be the year that if you've never programmed for everybody or never included everybody, then here's that opportunity. I want to hear from you what your concerns are, what ideas that you've had. What do you think might be your magic bullet to help save your summer? Anything goes. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
And I'll have something to say at the end.
This is Sherry from Ellenwood, and you know, I was thinking, okay, we're going to be on top of it with Melody being able to present, you know, to everybody, but never thought about the schools probably be going to taking all those devices back. Yeah, that just put a bummer on my summer.
And yeah, that's one of that big parts of this whole thing, because the connectivity that we're lucky enough to have right now may be completely gone. And the fact that, you know, it's not just the devices. When CKLS calls your libraries, you know, they ask you the question, you know, do you have a smartphone and do you know how to use it? And do you have a computer that has the internet? And, you know, we're lucky enough that most of our libraries responded that they have one or the other available to them. They may have to go to their building to use it. But I bet you if we start asking our communities, we're going to find that those answers, the cell phone that they might have may be mom's that she uses for everything and isn't going to pass it off to a kid to do summer library with.
Story time.
Other thoughts?
This is Alice Bashand at Frank Carlson. And so basically what I'm understanding is we just need to be flexible, and whatever happens. And basically, so there's not one answer that'll fit all of us, and each individual town has to abide by what each individual town has decided. And I know Denise and I have visited a little bit about this in the last week, and she's feeling that we may not have summer reading this summer,
Right.
basically. And if we don't, well, we don't. And if school comes back in the fall, because Concordia always has a fall break, then maybe what I was planning on doing in the summer, I would probably do over fall break. And
Right.
but we would still receive the grant money that we were supposed to receive for summer reading, correct?
Right. We don't know what it's going to look like. What we do know is that while summer library program is a lot of work, it also brings a great deal of joy to our libraries and to our communities and to our library staff. And I'm just going to say that I don't think there's anybody who's going to say, well, to heck with it, we're not doing it, even though they're open and serving patrons. They're just not going to do that. I have a question. So if the library pays someone outside of library staff to plan and do summer library program for us, this is about the time that we should be talking to them about getting ready on the planning. And we're not quite sure what to do. If we don't do that and we're all back in the building by June, the existing staff won't have time for it. What would you say, Patty?
That was the one question that came up with a librarian last week. Yep. And said, do I hire them or do I say this is off for the summer?
Gail Santee would say it's off for the summer. But what I would also say is take the manual home with you one day and look for some things, things that you can print out in the manual, like games, more passive programs that in case you get back and the library is open, you have something to give them. And think about having a woohoo, we're all here party at the end. You're gonna have to do what you have to do. It's gonna be really hard for some of us to wrap our heads around something that doesn't exist yet. We don't know, it's very nebulous. And do you have the manual already is another question. Linda Tebow says she can only chat. She's hoping they can do outside activities. She's currently checking out books by putting them at the door. Linda, you need to stop that. That violates the stay-at-home order now. You need to stop that. She's also doing online story time. And we talked about that earlier. If you're going into the library to do that online story time, you can't do that anymore. And you can't go into the library to get books to do the story time to do at home. So you'll have to rethink about that. She'll do some program of some sort and she won't cancel. They loved all ages and they have almost as many adults as children. And I think that's a big bonus there as well. Amy at Otis reminds us that the manual is available online. So if you have that internet connectivity once a week or so, you can go and look quick there. We're going to come up with some ideas as well. What else does everybody else have to say? Diane, can you find the link for the online manual? And put that into the chat, please.
A lot of my board members are not savvy with the electronics to do a online board meeting for April. How are we to do our budgeting for next year?
Do they have telephones?
Yes.
We can do it on the phone. I'm going to have you contact Andy.
Yes.
Email Andy and he'll get you all set up with that. I think you'll be surprised that Andy can walk through even the most technology challenged people and get them successfully online with Zoom.
Well, I've already decided Andy's almost godlike, so.
Yeah, I think so too.
Or Andy.
I try.
There's some good stuff coming through the chat. Barb and Russell would appreciate any ideas that are legal and right away for story time. Chris says, just an idea, if everyone would have the children journal this as an imagine your story, it would be great for history of this 2020 time. Jessica wants to know, has anyone else already paid presenters? Sherry says, we've paid our presenters and they said they would send it back if we had to cancel. Amy at Otis says we're able to still use, storylineonline.net for story time. Great idea on journaling. And Haley is thinking about doing YouTube tutorials for some of the craftier programs. That way people who don't have access to internet or devices during the summer can access them once they do, like in the fall when school hopefully resumes.
A couple of you have mentioned things like Storytime Online and those kinds of things. I have lots of those put together. Christie's LibGuide, and also if you've been following things I've been throwing out there on the CKLS Facebook pages, and if you're not a friend, please be a friend, because we have 3 pages. The main page says Central Kansas Library System. The Diane and Patty page is CKLS Youth Services. And then Christie's school page is CKLS School Libraries, I think. And all of those would benefit you following because there's different content appearing out there. In terms of some of those places will continue to be free. Storytime Online, that one will continue to be free, and it is legal because that's somebody else doing the stories for you. Some of these are going to have these expiration dates. But a lot of the things that we've talked about are story pieces. Let me point out, if you have not watched Mo Willems do the Draw Together activity, it's 3 days a week, I think, at noon. It's certainly worth watching, and even as an adult, it's fun to just watch. It's, 15 minutes of your day. But we need to think beyond the word summer reading and think to the words summer library. It may not be in a building, as Linda at Scandy alluded to. Maybe what she's able to do is an activity in the park because that's what's allowed. There's lots of opportunities there. Sherry has a good question. How often would you recommend post to Facebook? That question's come out a lot. And actually what the gurus are saying is no more than 4 times a day. 2 is actually ideal. And also choose if you're going to do one high day of 4, figure out who you're talking to. If you'll notice, there's always at least 4 posts on Tuesday, because historically you're all open on Tuesday. And so we knew there was a chance that we would catch you watching one of our pages. But certainly send along, like right now, that I'm playing games with you. Like last week it was the change the book title and add the word toilet paper, because that's what was on our minds. Playing games like that gets them something to do and makes their time online, not just looking at how many cases are in Kansas and not just watching the news.
One of the things that Mary Beth has posted, and you need to bear in mind, is that CKLS believes that everyone can still maintain the standard of having an actively maintained web presence, even if that means that once a week when you go into the library, you log on, you look at the CKLS page and decide to share some things onto your own library page. That's something that you should all be doing much more than anything else right now, is finding ways to stay connected with your library.
It might be the what are you reading? And if you really want to go crazy, ask them where they found it. Or what are you watching? Because every time somebody says Hoopla or somebody says Sunflower e-Library, that's another patron that's potentially going, hey, what's that and how do I get it? And then there's an opportunity, because right now we are so used to calling up Mrs. Johnson and asking if we want to drop our books by on our way to lunch. We can't do that right now, and I know how hard it is. The other thing about being able to use your Facebook or email, it's okay to check on your patrons, especially those that are vulnerable or alone, and may or may not have someone to check on them. Because I know many of you, and I know I've done it, and I was in a big library, have gone to someone's funeral, have dropped off books when someone has broken a leg. So we know your towns. And just like we checked on you first, that's okay as a way to check in and say, hey, I'm still here and I miss you. Just check in today. And yesterday was Selfie Sunday. I just wanted to see that you were out there and that I saw smiling faces.
Alice has a question. Just to be clear, she asks, we don't need to worry about sending you to youth services our summer marketing piece by June 15th if we don't have one by that time. And the answer would be yeah. If June 14th we're allowed to be back in the library, that brochure is not going to be at the top of your list.
No. And frankly, if by the governor's order to close school buildings and the governor's order to put us at stay at home and the federal order for April 30th, I think is where they landed yesterday. If for some reason this does stop the spread, something could be happening July 1st. And if that's the case, I'm going to say, hey, here's a new date to send me your activities by, or here's a new date to make sure that you submit a summer library program evaluation, whatever that looks like. You may or may not know that some of our communities actually do their entire summer library program in a week, because their kids get shipped off at the time dads and moms go out to the field, their kids get shipped off to the city to go stay with grandma. So they cram their summer library program in the first 2 weeks of June. And that's it. They're reading all summer, but they don't do stuff all summer. So this isn't going to look like anything you've ever done. And so the hardest thing is for you to take it all away and just erase it and say, 2020 looks different. It's a chance, though, for you to do something, something that makes the library more than the stuff that's in it. Because you already are. The fact that you showed up today when you could have sat and watched television or read a book or listened to music, you showed up because you're concerned about your community and the people it serves. And so this is the year that compassion and that we care about you message comes out.
Right. Let's see, Karen Wallace says we need to watch Pushing Hoopla because it does require a separate or a unique email for each user. If you're signing up kids, they might not have their own email. She's had some problems with this. Yes, it does require a unique email address. The kids don't have to have access to it, but it does require one. The Gail Santee could go in and make Gail Santee 2, 3, and 4 for the children, and those would be the ones that we would use. And the kids would never know they even had an email address, Karen. But yes, it does require a unique email address for each account. And that way then we know, we're better able to track the statistics and the use.
I will say that it doesn't require a real email. It doesn't ever confirm, which is also a problem if somebody mistypes their email and then they forget what their user or their password is, they can't reset it. But, you know, take that with a grain of salt, but it does not actually know if it's a real email address or not.
Amy at Otis wanted to know if CKLS has any templates of what to post about being closed, and she's struggling the wording. Well, actually, it's just that we're closed until further notice because of the stay-at-home order by the governor is what I was going to suggest, Amy. There's really nothing more than that. Also, if you can get into Library Aware, there's a lot of things in there that EBSCO is making and pushing out to us. They're really nice things, and some other people have as well already done that. Yes, Karen said she had some families try and sign up with mom or dad's address and it messed up the accounts. They have to be unique. Barb and Russell, would we be able to help children with school issues teaching like summer school? When we're all back in school, Jim? I mean, whenever we're back in our normal libraries? Is that what Barb is asking about? Yes. Well, certainly if you are a qualified and certified teacher, there's not going to be any question about that. Most of us are not. Summer library program is considered enrichment, and it really does help stop that summer slide with kids forgetting things. The school district may be interested in setting something up like summer school or tutoring at the library, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see. And if she has a substitute teacher's license, then I would recommend that she contacts the school district, and they'll be able to give better guidance on that than we are.
That's what I was going to say. You need to contact the district about that, and they may just be thrilled and have exactly what they'd like to happen. So yeah, I would contact them.
I saw clapping. Yay!
Thank you,
yes.
Christy. That mirrored what I was going to say. And yes, some of our libraries probably have active tutoring programs that already exist.
Yeah.
Or perhaps this may be a need that you see in the future. and you know, and you know, I am a former teacher, and so you know, I've been thinking about the school kids, and Christy and I haven't had this conversation yet, but I know she is as well. And basically, your fifth grader next year, their sixth grade teacher is truly going to start March the 1st with teaching everything that they needed to know. And unfortunately, we're going to cram 5 9-weeks of school in a 4 9-week period for the next school year.
Right.
So that's why that magical asterisk that we talked about, the fact that there will be no standardized testing in Kansas, another asterisk that will appear. So some of those kids' records won't have all of the things that you're supposed to do at 5th grade and at 8th grade, as well as the yearly standardized. So, you know, this is the year of everything looks weird. But, you know, I can tell by some of your comments that you've been thinking, and I can tell by some of your faces that the concern is there, but we know it's not the end of the world. Because the one thing that is most important in a library is you. And that person may be the person that's outside of the building for, could be a very short time or could be a very, very long time.
Right.
I think we should stop saying this is going to look weird and say this looks like an opportunity to learn something new, to do something different, to reach out and collaborate. I think that's what we need to say instead.
Our teachers are just as concerned as you are, as are their parents, as are the kids. And frankly, we all have the same mission. We just want to help our patrons, our kids, our families.
And one of the things I want to add to that is it builds on us acknowledging that everyone is frazzled and stressed. And when all of this goes away and our opportunity to get back into our buildings is there, the stress and frazzle will still be there. The most important thing that you're going to be able to offer to your community if we're back in the buildings by June is not summer library program. It's not. It's not a story time. It's not passive programming and coloring sheets. It's not the books that you can get for them on Pathfinder Pill or on Interlibrary Loan. It's not the movie license and the movies that you're going to show. It's not. The most important thing is you and your compassion and understanding of your community. If you think you're going to get any work done that whole first week, you're being silly. Think about when there's a blizzard or an ice storm, how much time you spend at the desk talking about the weather. This is a little bigger than an ice storm. Your patrons are just going to need you. They're going to want to visit. They're going to want to talk. They're going to need the library to truly be that community gathering place. If your library hosts coffee for the old men or old women, and boy, I'm looking at myself and I'm getting real close there, they're really going to need that spot because they've not been able to have that coffee for each other. The librarian and the library staff are the most important things in any library. It's not the stuff, it's not the tech, it's not the gear, it's not the building. The most expensive item on any line item in a library is staff. That's because it's the most valuable. And if you don't take away anything at all today, Patty will be sad, but if you take away what I just said, she'll be happy again. You are the library, and you are what's important about the library in your community. And remember that when you come back, there's going to need to be a transition time. You may have summer library program planned, and they say, boom, we're back in the libraries on June 1st. Don't start your program for a couple of weeks. You're going to have a lot to do, a lot to catch up, for heaven's sakes. Thank goodness the holds queue was suspended. I can only imagine we'd have like a 40-page list. It's a Great Bend. It would just be a nightmare. There will be things to do, and CKLS will be here to support you. We got some big chats going on.
Diane and I would like nothing more than to be able to get on the road sometime in June or July and go visit your libraries. And frankly, you know, if you were a part of the system plan discussion last week, you know, one of the conversations that led the strategic planning committee to changing how that grant money would be distributed came from the fact that some of those strategic planning committee members said, we want you in our libraries. We want to see you. And they were referring to CKLS staff. And there's nothing, Diane, and I would like better than to get on the road and go visit you and see your kids and see what's happening in your library and help out making peanut butter sandwiches or playing hopscotch on your hot sidewalk, Ramey. We're willing to do it. And we just hope that
in the car
opportunity
with
exists.
Patty for 2 hours. Sorry, I had to say it.
I think that if libraries are open this summer, you're going to see a lot of CKLS consultants out, and it may be Andy that shows up for your summer library program. There's no telling. It may be Missy, it may be staff, who knows, but you will see us. We will be there, and we will be able to offer a helping hand, or at least a hug or a pat on the back, depending on what you want and what you need. Listen, worst case scenario in the whole wide world is CKLS doctors up a packet of materials and we send them to you, and you figure out a way to distribute them to your kids. And we call it Summer Library Program. And it's coloring sheets, 10 crayons in each one.
That's the two girls there anymore, and they each have their own bathroom.
Yes.
So they don't get to happen-aid each other.
Right, right. You know, so we'll come up with something, and we know that it's not going to be as great as what it was going to be, or it certainly might not even be as good as what you can come up with, but we'll be able to offer you something. You will not ever going to leave you hanging on any of this stuff.
So we have just a few minutes. And so what I want to tell you, Diane and Patty are not sitting around just twiddling their thumbs watching Netflix. Oh, hey, Diane has a cat. We promised you a cat.
Tell me, Diane. Well, I want Andy to share my screen in just a little bit too. So
that's Tuck. So Diane and I have been gathering ideas, things that would work for summer library, but it happens to be at home. And we're going to share out those ideas in a group. Oh, look, my baby's here.
Oh, look, there's Daniel.
And so, like, kitchen science with making salt dough Play-Doh with flour, salt, and water.
And you're getting a Ziploc with the flour, salt, and water. Yep.
Those kinds of things. So we want you to know that we're searching for ideas that will work for any size library, knowing that we're dealing with 6 kids or 600 kids. So we're gathering practical ideas that would be things that mom could do at home if that's what it works out is, mom, caregiver, dad, whoever happens to be there, older brother or sister. So we're working for you behind the scenes.
So I'm going to share something. Everything that I keep seeing on self-care talks about how wonderful it is to have your pets with you. And ours right now is on vacation in Ponca City, Oklahoma. She's at well, I don't think it's a beauty spa, but anyway, I'll share this with you and you can see it. Desktop. Share. Here we go. Let me open that up. And let me play it for you.
Oh, we got a wrestling match. There's another one.
I like how they grouped themselves in threes there for a bit.
Gail, how many babies do you have?
9.
How many babies are going to come live at your house?
0.
They're not social distancing.
No, they're not good at that.
Come home with you, Gail. One besides Maisie.
So there we go. So we don't get our pet, but we are getting a weekly update. Maisie is the big girl, and she had 9 puppies a couple of weeks ago. And so we're getting to watch them. They're not social distancing, but they are. Last week, they couldn't walk. You saw how wobbly they are. So last week, they were kind of crawling and rolling, just like regular babies. And this week, they're kind of walking and they'll fall over, but they learned how to growl this week. That's what's up with us.
My cat is Ricky, short for Ricky Ricardo. And he almost took the computer with him when he jumped off my lap. So
My kids took over my recliner, so I don't get to sit there right now. So they're actually sleeping. So that's good. So for now, hold tight. Don't worry. All of those requirements are just sitting out there, just sitting. Don't worry about them. If there's some of you that want to stay on because you need someone to talk to, you're welcome to stay on. I'm not going anywhere. Gail's not going anywhere, and I'm sure other CK staff will stay as well. Or if you need a private conversation, drop an email, make a phone call, and say, I just need to talk. And but right now, don't worry. We've got several more weeks of being at stay at home, and we don't know what that will look like as we come out of it. And maybe at that point, we're in a place to have another conversation of what the new reality might look like. And as I said, Diane and I are not sitting back here. We are collecting ideas for you to save you that time so you're not overwhelmed by the internet and Facebook and the news. Take your breaks, take care of yourself and your families.
Thank you.